Good evening, everybody. And tonight, these candidates are vying on why they should become the next MP for the Port Waikato Electorate for the next 3 years. But with every election, there's one thing stepping in their way, and that's your vote. And kia ora, good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Port Waikato by-election special for It's in the Ballot from the Pukekohe Memorial Hall. How is our audience this evening? And thank you for coming for a packed night out. It seems to be by-elections, we seem to attract a full house of candidates and a full house of audience members. So it's quite good, and it's amazing how everyone seems to like to focus on everything other than their own electorate. So let's kick off. We've got our first candidate here. Who are you, and can you say that to our voters?
My name is Kim Turner, and I'm with New Zealand Loyal, and I'm your future.
Okay, next up. Hold the microphone a bit up.
Yeah. Hello everybody. My name is Vijay, and I'm from Vision New Zealand, and I'm the first time candidate for Port Waikato. And before that, I would really like to applaud some independent.
It's not an opening statement.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's just saying who you are.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get on to our next candidate.
Hi, I'm Jill Evans from the Women's Rights Party.
Kia ora, my name is Alfred Ngaro, and I'm the leader of the New Zealand Party.
Good evening, I'm Anna Rippon, and I'm from the Animal Justice Party. Thank you all for coming out and taking an interest.
New Zealand First and candidate for Port Waikato.
Hello, I'm not Andrew Bailey. Andrew's at another meeting tonight.
Hello, I'm not Gordon Dixon.
Thank you, Lad, and thank you for our two fill-ins for stepping in for the candidates who are not here. Feel free to leave those pictures on there, reminding everyone who hasn't turned up for the night. As a reminder for those who those candidates who are a bit squeamish to not appear on It's in the Ballot, this is what happens. You did have the option of coming in remotely or nominating someone to stand in for you. So, you know, you have been given your opportunities, and that is your choice. So now, before we sit there and kick off to the to the candidates, let's bring up the map for the Port Waikato Electorate and give a bit of a brief area to find out if you're in the Port Waikato Electorate and whether you're a voter or not. And there are some very myriads of boundaries that sit there and do it, including I heard one person got caught out with a nomination not being in there. Now, is the map live, Alex? It is live. Okay, so if you get it from the top, you've got the got the Manukau heads, and you can head all the way down. You've also got the big settlement of Waiuku, and you've also got the settlement of Port Waikato, and then you head down from what used to be a state highway called 22 out to Raglan, and then you head across. It also has now has a lake called Waiwhangapai, is it? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure. It's I'm not used to lake names up this way. You do have Rangariri and Tekawhata, and anyone who remembers the famous Glen Murray one-lane bridge, and also includes Pocono Mary, which I think used to have a coal-powered power plant, but no longer does. I probably not. Some of the names I'm a bit too scared to sit there and say. And you've got probably the biggest population centre at Pukekohe out there, also where State Highway 22 currently ends. And I believe you having electric trains coming to you, which for me, I've had them all my life. But yes, I do know for Auckland, that's a very new thing. So let's kick off. Casey, would you like to go first on your opening statement? Since we started from this end, well, let's go from the other end. Or sit, whichever one you want. You know, opening statements are why you should become the next MP for the next 3 years.
Hi, I'm Casey Costello. I have been privileged and honoured to have entered Parliament just recently after the election as number 3 on the New Zealand First Party list. I'm standing, and I was standing before, as the electorate candidate for Port Waikato. This is where I live. This is where I've worked most of my life, where I did most of my police service. I believe that Port Waikato needs a strong local voice. And if I get into Parliament, we bring a 9th candidate in for New Zealand First, who's an outstanding candidate and economist. I think that I have the credentials to stand and be the salmon swimming upstream and stand for important issues, which New Zealand First has campaigned on. But I have the knowledge and the connections to make a real difference on the local issues. And one of the biggest local issues is that we lost our identity when we were absorbed by the Auckland super city. And I think we need to review that and have some real strong stand on who we are as a nation moving forward. I'm asking you for party votes so that I can be the candidate for Port Waikato. And that's what I stand for.
Thank you. Next up, Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Rippon. I grew up in Auckland and moved out to Pukekohe about 20 years ago. Then Auckland moved out to me, much to Franklin's disgrace. And I've worked in Pukekohe for most of those years. I'm now at a law firm. I'm with the Animal Justice Party because I see that animal issues sort of take the back burner when other parties, there's so many people issues, obviously, but they need someone in Parliament for them, making sure that the legislation doesn't get watered down when it is accepted by the people, that it gets through. On a personal level, I would like to represent people in my community and have more of go-between between Parliament and the people. That's my personal goal in politics, and probably won't get in this time, but I'm determined to continue to try and be a voice for animals and people.
Next up, Health.
Kia ora, kia rana, and greetings to everyone. It's an honour to be here. My name is Alfred Ngaro. I just want to say, Port Waikato, you've already made political history. And the first time in MMP, we're now having a by-election after the general election. And that's for the saddened loss of the ACT candidate. And so now you get a chance not only to be making history here, but there's an opportunity where you can actually have 3 political representatives here in the Port Waikato area. Andrew Bailey's already in, he's on the list. Casey Costello's great, she's on the list as well. You get a chance to vote in a 3rd electorate MP. And that's why I put myself forward to you as well. I've had 9 years of experience. I've been in Parliament. I've been a cabinet minister. I know what it takes to represent a community and to represent this community of Port Waikato. So can I encourage you this? Would you consider the fact is that rather than just having 2, and if you can remember, any of the other votes for both Andrew and Casey will get another MP, but not for this electorate. So Port Waikato, you get an opportunity to have 3 MPs for your electorate.
Okay, next up, Jill.
Hi, I'm Jill Evans. I'm one of the leaders of the Women's Rights Party. I live in Glenbrook in the Port Waikato Electorate, and I recently retired as a leader of the Midwives Union. I'm standing in the Port Waikato by-election to highlight widespread concerns about what is happening to women and children in our society. Shame that we have to do this in 2023. There are very good reasons why women and girls' rights are protected in policy and law, and this includes our right to single-sex spaces, such as toilets and changing sheds, and for protection of women's rights, including our right to speak freely without a fear of intimidation and violence. In the name of inclusivity and kindness, the voices of women and girls have been excluded and shut down in our schools, our universities, political parties, and unions. Jobs have been put at risk if people dare to question the ideology. But worst of all, the ideology that's being pushed confuses and damages our children, and that's what motivates me.
Thank you there. Vijay, you're up next.
Hello, everybody. I'm an immigrant, just like most of you. Some of you are, probably you must have come in, or your parents would have come in, or your grandparents would have come in. So I'm one of the new immigrants. I have an engineering degree back from India, an MBA from AUT. I studied business from Auckland Uni, and I'm a consultant, the ones which the governments have been criticizing. But we are people who provide advice, and we have the skill of analyzing things properly, finding insights, and I'm very good at these two things. I have worked with many big Fortune 500 clients, and I want to stand it. I got my citizenship last May, and just like many of the people here, I could have crossed across to the ditch and for an extra nickel, but I choose to stand here because I saw in the past 3 years I had some really lovely people who were supporting me in my hardships, and that's where I thought, I'm not quitting, I'm fighting here, irrespective of how many people stand with me. I want to bring that voice.
Okay, and Kim.
Welcome everybody here tonight. My name is Kim Turner. I'm from New Zealand Loyal, and I'm standing in front of you today here to basically get my message across that if you vote for any other party apart from myself and New Zealand Loyal, you're basically going to lose the riches and you're going to be looking like me. This is your future. New Zealand Loyal, I've had the privilege of standing. I'm a local. I also live in the electorate, unlike quite a few people that actually ran in this election, and I run a small construction company. It's actually been devastated, and we're basically gone from about 9 down to 2. We know that the industry has been, every industry throughout New Zealand has actually been absolutely destroyed by this government and by all the parties that have sat in government up to the election of 2023. So I've stood because I'm not a politician. I'm a people's representative. I'm never going to be a politician. I'm a dog like a bone, or I'm like a dog with a bone. I don't give up. I'm basically one of these people that is going to fight for the people of this country and going to fight for the Port Waikato Electorate. I'm actually going to do something here. I'm not going to not turn up like Mr. Bailey. I'm going to be there and I'm going to actually talk to people. I just want to say thank you so much for coming along tonight and listening to us all.
Thank you for that. And the questions we think you'll be asking after watching tonight's show, let's bring it up there. Which candidate's first members bill will be the one you would like New Zealand to first action on Parliament's first members day? What Port Waikato specific policies will these candidates be enticing you to vote for them? And here's my favourite one. Where will the 15,509 Port Waikato voters who gave their party vote to Labour at Green put their electoral vote this by-election, as they no longer have a candidate option on the ballot paper? And if you are one of those voters, it's in the ballot's going to help you make that decision with these candidates here right tonight. So, Jill, welcome back for making the nice big drive up the country.
Thanks, Sam. So with a great vibe of this audience, I decided that I would let you know that I have some history with this place as well. And that is that my maiden name is Greathead. And you might not know, but you had a mayor, I can't remember the years, it is on Wiki, I don't remember, called Henry Greathead Rex Mason. He was your mayor many years ago, many decades ago. He then became a member of parliament, and according to Wiki, he is the longest member of parliament in the New Zealand government. So there you go, another piece of history, Alfred, for this particular town itself. So there we go. And the interesting thing is I actually come from Greytown, so my ancestor was not Henry Greathead, he was George Greathead, and he came to Greytown in the 1850s. And the thing that's together with Greytown and Pukekohe is that we've both got East and West streets. So I was brought up in East Street, Greytown. It's a bit busier here though, much. Anyway, so that's my history.
Just to add to that, was it Henry Mason was the Attorney General at one stage, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Education, the Minister of, oh God, they have to call it Native Affairs, and the President of the Labour Party, which ironically is not standing a candidate here tonight.
There we go. And I was told about it when I was a little girl at 1967 decimal currency year. My grandfather, who was pretty much the same age as he was, told me that a family member was very much involved in the decimal currency, the monetary reform. So that's another thing that he did. I forget now what all of those things he did, but anyway, there you go. So he's quite well known of what he did, and he started off in Pukekohe as the mayor. Anyway, it is now my pleasure to take us through the box numbers. So, Sam, would you like to choose the candidates, and I'll open the boxes.
Okay, so so for those viewers at home who are wondering, so we have 28 question boxes here. The candidates pick one by one box numbers, and they answer the questions in it. Now, each candidate here has 2 button cards. So if another candidate has a question they want to answer and they didn't get to pick the box, they can use their button card and step in. And if there is a question that's a bit too curvy, a bit too much of a curveball, they can use their defer card. Now, we hopefully don't want them using their defer cards, but they can use it. You can sit there and do that. And each candidate has 1 minute to answer that. So, Jill, you get to go up first. What box number?
Just give me the number. Pick a number.
Number 9.
Number 9. So we have question Z, which is, will your party support a referendum on the Treaty of Waitangi?
Updated questions.
It was an updated
There was
question.
3 of them from the community that got sent to me last night that weren't included in the original list. That's traditionally not how we do things here. Otherwise, we could end up going here all night long.
So during the break?
Yeah, during the break, you can ask your candidates questions. That's fine.
Yeah. So would you like to answer that question? Sorry, Jill, I did send you out an email 1 o'clock today.
And I had prepared the others
Yeah.
as well. So I think that a referendum on the Treaty of Waitangi would be hugely...
Hold up the mic a bit, please.
I think that a referendum on the Treaty of Waitangi and the rewriting of the principles would be hugely divisive and would not help this country in its current state. The Women's Rights Party is clear that we acknowledge the treaty as Aotearoa New Zealand's founding document, and we advocate for economic and social equity, health and well-being of wahine Māori and whānau.
Thank you. Anna, you get the next box number.
Sorry. B2, please.
There'll be 7.
7. In English. Sorry, my te reo is not great. That is question P. There is concern about the amount of discharge from water treatment plants and general waterways infrastructure into our waterways. What is your party's policy to upgrade this infrastructure and provide more monitoring? And second question, will your party provide more government funding without raising our rates?
Animal Justice Party believes in having a clean, healthy habitat for people and animals. In regards to the funding, that needs to be we're a single issue party, we're for the animals, so we haven't got a budget or funding written yet. But personally, I would like to see any businesses or activities that are contributing towards the pollution of waterways be made to be responsible and use their profits to clean up the messes that they've made. If it's a local government issue, if it's a water treatment plant, then that needs to be included in the cost for that water treatment plant. We should be funding the activities that we're doing instead of stealing from other places and making the books look good one side, etc.
Okay. And the great news is if they use their profits, it's actually tax deductible to clean up their mess. So, yeah, something worth for those corporates out there. Kim, what box number?
I think I'm going to go for box number 8, please.
We have question L. Some tenants are living in damp, mouldy and cold houses, but many are too scared to say anything in fear of losing their tenancy or their rents being put up. How is your party going to hold landlords to account for substandard rental homes and skyrocketing rents? And how are you going to ensure that there's enough warm, dry, healthy and affordable homes for people to rent?
Okay, thanks so much for the question. It's actually quite an easy answer, but apparently the politicians and the government actually don't know how to affect change. So all that Greens have actually done is instigate legislation to basically make it more expensive for people to actually rent. They've done that by increasing the cost to homeowners, and a lot of these people are actually families, Kiwi families who have actually invested in a future, investment to actually capital gain. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how they get ahead. The fact of the matter is that a lot of those people actually look after other good Kiwis and they pay it forward. And I know lots and lots of people that have actually paid it forward and the rents have been really, really low. And I also heard that they had to sell their houses and actually kick those really good people out that had been there for a decade or more, because the Greens had and Labor had instigated this new legislation. So it's actually not a hard one. There are plenty of homes out there, and that question was also about the immigration too, and people actually, the affordability of the homes. And I think what we need to do is we need to stop letting immigrants, as in investors who are not living here, come in here and invest in the country and take homes off good Kiwis.
Thank you for that. Vijay, what box number?
Number 6.
We have question K. What policies does your party have to manage the extreme weather events brought on by climate change?
Stop it. Stop it. You want to defer?
Yes. Yeah. Climate change.
Your microphone, please, so those at home can hear you.
Yeah. Climate change. It has got two different side of opinions. Some very pro, some very anti against it. But when we are speaking of cost of living crisis, which the opposition parties who are trying to come into power used, we are in a situation which is basically saying we can't afford housing, we can't afford food, we can't pay our rents, we can't live properly. And these, I think, are basically third world problems, which basically they are saying New Zealand is a poor country which cannot afford things. Now, in such a scenario, if someone wants to go and says, okay, to save climate, I'm going to put an extra nickel into it. From a business perspective, it's not wise. You need to address your immediate concerns first and then look at the fancier things later.
We have a button from
I've
Kim
got a button.
and a button from Alfred.
2 buttons. Do you want to go first, Alf? Go first. No, yeah.
Go now?
Start here.
Okay. So one of the things I think it's really important is the issue around civil defence. What we found in a lot of our communities is that, number one, our responsive to those emergencies were not only poor, but it meant that a lot of people actually were traumatised over a longer period of time. We saw that with Cyclone Gabriel, even down in the Tairāwhiti region and the East Coast in particular, Esk Valley and so forth. So there's a number of things that need to happen. Number one, I believe New Zealand needs to ensure that the government has a better response in regards to civil defence. Number two, the biggest issue is around risk, and particularly around insurance. And I think the fact is that where there are situations where government can provide better insurance cover for those families and for those businesses in particular as well, and also manage the risk into the future. I think those are two things when I've been travelling around that are really important. If a government could do something, then that's what it could do.
Okay. Kim,
Okay.
your button.
I think everybody knows that climate change is a farce, and if they don't, they need to actually go away and do some research. Climate change hasn't changed at all, and when they turn around and they say to you that we've got massive climate issues in this country and all around the globe, absolute bullshit. The fact of the matter is anybody sitting out there that actually knows what the percentage of carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere right now? Anybody know? It's actually 0.4. Okay, at 0.4%, it's actually carbon dioxide. It actually keeps us living, and it keeps everything green on this planet living. At 0.2, we lose everything. We lose the forestry, we lose animals, we lose everything. We lose the ability to actually create food. The fact of the matter is that climate change is a farce, and the reason they brought in the propaganda for the climate change, and remember it was global warming, and they had to stop that because global warming was actually not happening. We were actually in a glacial ice age. And we're coming back down into glass, or coming back up into glacial. So it literally means that there is no climate change. This happens through the evolutions as we get closer to the sun and then move away. We heat and we cool, and we heat and we cool. The fact of the matter is they brought in ETS, which stands for Emissions Trading Scheme. And years ago, and I'm talking 10 years, I was one of the first to talk to the actual, sorry? Yep.
You're running out of time.
Oh, okay.
Running out of time already.
I was one of the first to actually speak with one of the consultants that was working with the government, and he told me the ETS scheme and climate change was real, and the ETS scheme was actually I was a conspiracy theorist. Well, I've been proven right in everything. Thank you.
Okay, Casey, what box number?
I'll take number 1 because it keeps wanting to jump out.
Thank you, Casey. Can I just mention regarding questions, we have 28 questions in this part of the show. The first 10 questions within that 28 are what we call core questions, and that is every event we have done, which is now I think something like 28 events, this being the last one being the by-election, have the same questions. So that's for us to just sort of see how different electorates answer those questions. The rest, that is the rest of the 18 questions, have been asked by people from Port Waikato. They've submitted it on our website. So some of you laughed about this question. That's not our question. That is someone who has asked that question. And we include everyone. We try and include everyone who asks a question. I think there's maybe one that I haven't included. So just to let you know, that's how we get our questions. So number 1, and that is question M. Do you support vaccination against COVID? Clearly one of your voters' questions.
I'm not surprised. We come from a party, and as you know, we supported vaccinations generally because our leader has living memory of what happened for Māori in the Spanish flu epidemic. So the need for vaccinations were apparent then. We are the party that has gone to record ensuring that there will be a complete and comprehensive, without restraint, independent COVID inquiry into the whole situation that has occurred as a result of the COVID. And we will continue to support that. But in terms of vaccination, we can't be blind to the fact that vaccinations have had effect and benefit to New Zealanders. And isolating COVID is something that it will be part of the COVID inquiry.
Another button. God, you've used them up
Sorry.
very quickly.
Okay, I'm quite happy to use my second button on this. The fact of the matter is the scandemic is exactly that. There has been no living person in the world actually found to have the coronavirus, I should say COVID-19 coronavirus in their system. And they've actually put up $1 million for somebody to produce that. So it's a farce. It was a gain of function virus. It's a cold. It's a bloody cold, for God's sake. The fact of the matter is they needed to genocide the population of the world. We're talking about mass. We're talking tens of millions of people have been killed. We're not talking about the harmed on that, okay? So the fact of the matter is that we're now talking, and this is what New Zealand did, this is what Ardern did, was enforce mandates, totally unlawful, on a coronavirus, which is a cold. And the government has just now purchased another round of vaccinations, and along with the World Health Pandemic Treaty that Bloomfield has signed, it is going to get really nasty. Thank you.
Alfred, what box number?
Number 5.
And we have question I. The future of local government report says the current local government funding and finance system is already under pressure and is not sustainable. How is your party going to respond to this issue?
So one of the things that I have agreed with, and I've spoken to the former Mayor of Franklin, Mark Ball, is that there needs to be a review of the current super city setup. There was promised at a Royal Commission that there would be after 10 years, a review. Now, unless you have that review, you can't review, because when it comes to Port Waikato, and as Mark Ball has gone on the record saying, you know, Port Waikato has become the cash cow for the big smoke. And we've seen many situations where when you're up in the north in Rodney, or you're down here in Franklin, north and south of the Auckland City, they've always missed out on infrastructure funding and other funds that are really important for the local area. So I believe it's important, before you get to that, you've got to review it, make sure that we get the right conditions, because whatever funding comes has to make sure it benefits the people of Port Waikato.
Thank you for that. Okay, for the next round of questions, Casey, you get to go up first. What box number?
I'll take lucky 13.
We have question A. Over the past few years, New Zealand has suffered from many forms of division. How would your party reconnect people and heal the divide so we are a united country once again?
So for those of you who don't know, I've spent the last 7 years as spokesperson and lobbyist for Hobson's Pledge, advocating for equality before the law for all New Zealanders. It's something I feel passionate about. I will continue to advocate for. We've come from a government who thrived on the idea of division, whether it was wealthy against the poor, whether it was the tenant against the landlord, whether it was the employer against the employee. We have become racially divided into a bicultural nation, and not the inclusive bicultural nation that we all grew up knowing and loving. New Zealand First is the party that will put New Zealanders first, and we're committed to addressing the division, and we address the division first and foremost by ensuring better outcomes for New Zealanders overall.
Okay, and we've got 2 buttons. Who would like to go first?
When it comes to healing the divide, and the biggest challenge which we had with respect to creating this schism was a constant government narrative of fear. We had the news and media channels who went consistently initiating a sense of fear. And the same narrative is happening even now. If you don't vote national, you are in trouble. If you don't vote NZ first, you are in trouble. We are the saviors. This is the same fear narrative which is coming through. And we are strongly against such a fear narrative. We want to make sure that the Bill of Rights are enshrined back in toto, and none of the people, none of the employees or whether it is nurses, school teachers, or anybody else, should go through the pain of losing their jobs just because there is some government propaganda. And we are very strong on that.
And our next button.
So I've been involved in community development prior to going into Parliament. So I've got the experience to understand what it means to unite a community. The first thing you need to do is to take a strength-based approach. You ask this question to this community of Port Waikato: what are your community assets? What are your treasures? What do you have? Because you always have to start from your strengths. Once you've done that, then you then ask the question, so what is it that's divided us over a period of time, both in the past and in the present? You use your strengths to address the issues that are your biggest challenges. You see, once you've done that, then you know what to go out to, whether it's a government organisation or other areas inside of our community. Government does not have all the solutions to finding answers for our communities. I've done it internationally, I've done it locally, I've done it in communities that I know can make a difference. So you have to start off with a strength-based approach, ask the question about what we love about this Port Waikato community, then use that to address the challenges that we face every day.
Okay, next up, Jill, what box number?
We have question Q. New South Wales has an independent commissioner to investigate corruption. Do you think New Zealand should investigate creating a similar position?
Okay, so I don't know anything about the specific model that you're talking about for New South Wales to investigate corruption. However, the Women's Rights Party thinks that the Serious Fraud Office should be better resourced to investigate white-collar crime with at least as much vigour as the Ministry of Social Development conducts investigations into benefit fraud. What I would like to see is an independent commissioner investigating the widespread use of consultants in our public services. I've been involved in the last 5 years in Holidays Act breaches and what was the DHBs. And huge amounts of money were spent on Ernst & Young, KPMG, and PwC because the public service no longer employs people with the skills necessary to identify the problems and rectify them. And we just heard this morning about a crowd of lobbyists who have been given access to the Commerce Commission, and they have access to all their files, and they're a private lobbying company. It's disgusting.
And we have a button from Casey.
As you'd be aware, New Zealand First has been the party that has been brave enough to expose corruptions. If you recall the Wine Box inquiry that cost the leader of the party personally and politically for making that stand. We are the party that will believe in that, will promote that. We have campaigned on a commission of inquiry into the supermarkets and to banking. Australia has had 5 inquiries at that level. New Zealand's had none, and we will promote those levels of influence over what's going on in big business and in the supermarkets.
And just for some figures on the Serious Fraud Office has a budget of $17 million, and I think it delivers a hell of a lot better than the work and income budget of $51 million to chase fictitious benefit fraud allegations, or in many cases they discover, whoopsie, we got it wrong and we have paid you not enough money. Which is quite disgusting from a government department that, what do you call it? Rule number 1, the beneficiary is wrong. Rule number 2, if the beneficiary is right, you must tell them they're wrong. Seems to not know what the customer service is always right. Alfred, what box number?
We have question S. Should councils be forced by the Ministry of Health to fluoridate their water supplies?
So the long answer is no. I just want to qualify the fact that when we say local, it should be local. When locals vote for their local council, they vote for local representation. And so they should have the sovereignty of the constituents of their local rates that people pay to be able to make their decisions. Not all communities will vote for it and want it. Let the people decide. So that's what I believe is really important.
Okay, Kim, what's your next box number? Yeah.
Let's go. Number 22, please.
We have question E. E for Echo. Will your party review the relationships and sexuality education, known as RSE, in primary schools?
Goodie. Oh, this is a goodie. Hey, look, I'm on board here with Jill 100%, and I'll probably be saying exactly what Jill would want to say. So the fact of the matter is, the RSE, which is relation to sexuality education, absolutely gone. It has to stop. And by the way, I've heard from a lot of people through Port Waikato, and they're really, really concerned. Young early childhood education people are very concerned about where this is all going. We're talking about kids, undeveloped kids that are basically being have this thrust upon them, and it's absolutely disgusting. The transgender sexuality library, things that they have for the kids, etc. It needs to stop. And the people need to take back the power and stop this. And I've said to a lot of people, take your kids out of school temporarily and start to homeschool them, because the fact of the matter is that you should not be putting kids in this position. It's disgusting.
VJ, what box number? Yeah.
Number 14.
We have question AA, which is a new addition you got this afternoon. So the question is, ACT, Labour and Greens are not standing in the Port Waikato Electorate. How will your party appeal to those voters?
Thank you very much. This election is for the candidate vote. So we are not talking about for the parties. We already casted our vote 1 month ago, 2 weeks ago. This is a test of who would be the right candidate for you guys. Now on that scale, if the Labour supporters or Green supporters can see the rationale of the argument which I am bringing on to the table, or the traits which I am trying to bring to the table, please vote for me. And for those who are not, or including everyone, if you don't feel any one of us is not right, don't vote. Please vote the person who you think is right.
And is that a button or a... Oh, you want a button on that question?
Two buttons.
Yep, go ahead.
So, Women's Rights Party members share the concerns of Labour and Greens voters. We want women's health to be prioritised, including our maternity services. We want better resources to support women who are victims of violence and sexual assault. We will fight for wraparound services for mothers to keep their children safe and get mothers out of dysfunctional situations so they can care for their own children. We want better income support for women with children and affordable childcare. We want government and its agencies to settle pay equity claims in a more timely fashion. Women, due to low incomes over our lifetime and career breaks to raise children, are more negatively affected as we age, and many are in rental housing and struggling to survive with limited savings. People need to have a livable income as they age for their dignity. Like many Labour and Greens voters, we oppose use of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and double mastectomies for teenagers. We support health education being taught at age-appropriate levels, and stop telling our children they could be born in the wrong body, because it's not true. And yes, we don't want men and women's changing sheds or competing unfairly in women's sports, and nor do we want our daughters and granddaughters exposed to this. We want our girls to grow up to be strong women who are confident and without fear of intimidation and bullying.
And now, Anna, your button.
Thank you. Animal Justice Party have some core values, equality, sustainability, non-violence being some of those. Animal Justice Party is a party for everyone who believes that animals need a better deal. Animal lovers, people who love animals. So the Greens have started to set up a animal core, but anyone that loves animals, we're probably going to do a lot more than they are when we get into Parliament. A lot of our policies fit in well with the Greens' core values as well. For the Labour voters, we care about the health of workers, which they were founded on. And we care about individual rights for humans and animals. So ACT is very much about individual rights, and so are we.
Now to your box number.
Oh, thank you. Toru, 3.
O. What was the worst thing that happened to New Zealand politically over the past 3 years?
Pick a number.
I've got a very non-divisive and straightforward answer to this. MMP was supposed to have multiple parties, and that failed us.
Okay, now I'll just hit refresh and see what new order it gives me up. Jill, you get to go first. What box number?
We have letter R, Romeo. With the downturn in the economy, many small businesses are struggling to stay afloat. How is your party going to assist them through these tough times?
Okay, so we don't have a specific policy on this, but I think it should be remembered that businesses were kept afloat during COVID lockdowns with government funding, which they seem to have forgotten. The leave support scheme has only just ended, 15th of August, when the requirement for those with COVID to self-isolate was scrapped. However, with COVID still running rampant, we don't think workers should be going to work sick and making their colleagues sick. So in our view, ending the leave support scheme was premature. There was also a small business cash flow scheme, which provided loans to small businesses. Millions of dollars went into an apprenticeship scheme by which businesses were supported to take on apprentices. The scheme was aimed at retraining workers displaced by COVID. However, although women were far more likely to be displaced by COVID, none of the funding went into those occupational groups dominated by women workers, such as nurses, midwives, and teachers, where we have significant staffing shortages. That was a missed opportunity.
And we have a button from Vijay.
Yes. The biggest challenge for Port Waikato is there is a continuous narrative that this is a farmer's electorate. But if you look at the top 3 professions, it consists of managers, technicians, tradies, people who are working in the shops. And these people form more than 52% of the populace. So when parties come here saying this is a traditional farmer location, especially when national comes in, saying this is continue, and we also have a steel mill. So we have lots of businesses which are being dependent on steel mill. Now I come from India. We have seen how much cities transform every time there's a steel mill. And here, even though we have a port, we have a steel mill, we have to struggle so much. And this is the problem of the small scale companies, which the major parties are not focusing on. Political parties can say a lot, saying, we have provided subsidy and all. But when there is no immigrant coming into work for them, or when there is no business sustainable for them, how would these small businesses survive? There is nothing that is being spoken about them. They don't have the cash in their pockets to give party fund to the major parties to influence positions for them. How are the small people going to survive? They have to meekly surrender. And this is something which a rational person can only ask. So that's where I bring to the table. I want to ask the right questions, but also support the economy in the right way.
You've gone way over.
Sorry.
And we've got another button from Casey.
This is the part where Port Waikato has been misrepresented. We've never said it's a farming community. We're a microcosm of New Zealand with a massive amount of small to medium enterprise businesses who were really adversely affected during the COVID lockdown. Where the lockdown boundaries were, they shut down businesses and we stopped us being able to trade for a long period of time. New Zealand First has practical policies and steps in terms of fast net intranet introduction through the communities, business internships, vocational training and management support to allow our businesses to become thriving and successful again, to remove the 90-day trial process so that businesses are more confident in employing people and taking risks on employees. A range of things that will actually be tangible, hit the ground running steps to make our businesses successful and support this environment.
And Casey, you get to choose the next box number.
I think I got one number 1, so I'll take number 28.
We have question AB. Where does your party stand on co-governance and the addition of Māori wards on local councils?
New Zealand First stands strongly on the fact that we are all New Zealanders and we have equality before the law. That the fact that the treaty is being misrepresented and misused, an incredible document that created a nation that assured all of us equal rights before the law. Co-governance, if you understand, results in the appointment of unelected individuals who hold no accountability and cannot be voted out. There's no ability to ensure that they're doing what is required of them to make their outcomes for the initiatives that they've been put in place. Co-governance does defy democracy and it's opposing to what we are as a nation. If you understand Māori, we are iwi and hapu centric and therefore greater local representation is far better than the idea of creating appointed representation that has no accountability to the communities in which they serve.
Okay, Anna, what box number?
18, please. Te Kau Mā Wharu.
Question C. Do you believe that 16-year-olds have the maturity and comprehension to vote?
Our party decided not to campaign on this. We're divided because we're a party for everyone, so we all have different opinions about this. It's not something that we campaign on, but personally, I have a 16-year-old son. Some days he might decide something, the next day he might decide something else. There's a big difference between the 16-year-old and the 18-year-old. Not saying that some 16-year-olds aren't ready to vote and consider it, but I think it's too much of a risk to let that come down to 16, because also it's not actually good for the youth, because then they're going to be propaganded to, manipulated, and I don't want my son to be bombarded with people trying to get him to change his opinion at the age of 16. I want him to form his own opinion, and I do believe that I want to be able to install my values into him as well. As a mother, I don't want him to be exposed to everyone else's propaganda.
Alfred, what box number?
12.
Question why?
Does that match up or not?
Doesn't match up with mine, but if are you happy to take this question? Fine. Does your party believe that we should protect spaces and services exclusively for biological women?
Absolutely. I think it's important that we live in a tolerant society. So if we've got transgender women who want to enter into spaces, then we should make appropriate spaces for them. But as others have said, and as Jill has said as well, let's protect our women. We've already had cases in Invercargill where a similar case had happened at a swimming pool. And again, a grandmother was found in a very difficult situation. The carelessness of the response by the pool manager was to say, this is just the way of the future, just accept it. Now, I don't believe that's right. And fortunately, the community came along, met with the council and the manager, and they began to see the sense of what was happening. And that's what happens when you've got people who force change on a community and on a people and don't find better alternatives. So I believe that we need to protect those spaces for our women and our children and our daughters and our grandchildren.
And we've got a button from Jill.
Okay, absolutely. We should protect spaces and services for biological women and girls. And by far, the majority of New Zealanders agree. In a recent poll conducted in August, just before the election, only 21% supported allowing biological males who identify as women to access women's toilets. But the question is not only about toilets and changing sheds, where there are obvious reasons on the basis of privacy and safety for women to want to protect their areas. The Women's Right Party opposes men who identify as women in physical spaces, such as women's refuges, rape crisis centres, prisons and hospital wards where women are most vulnerable. Many councils have introduced policies, as you mentioned, in Invercargill, allowing males to access women-only services such as women-only swimming sessions. This happened at Linwood Pools in Christchurch and meant that the Muslim women there were excluded. Men who identify as women are also challenging women-only social media spaces. Lesbians are particularly concerned about protecting their own women-only meeting places in social media groups. Let's be clear, most men do not want to go into women's spaces. Most men do not get their rocks off by being in women's toilets. And most men don't commit violence against women, but some do. And that's why we have to have women-only spaces in the first place.
VJ, what box number?
24.
We have question G. Current information from overseas indicates that vaping is not a healthier alternative to smoking. Children of primary school age are becoming addicted. What is your party's plan to address this health concern?
Well, my personal opinion, smoking and vaping, both of them are harmful to health. So that is straightforward no, both from my end and also from my party. But more than that, we have to ask this question. Why is it that our children are getting tempted to these sort of bad habits? Vaping or, yeah, there can be any excuse. But don't you think there is more of a community problem? This is not just about a tiny school child. This is a problem which has to be addressed by the parents, by the teachers, by the neighborhood, by the sports complexes where these kids are going, and chide them and say, hey mate, this is not good. This is not good for your long run. Please avoid these things. I think the basic family structure of nurturing a child properly is being lost. And that is something that needs to be brought back into the forefront and make sure that our children have a healthier future.
Okay, Kim, what box number?
Letter N. What is your stance on the export of live animals?
I'd like to defer actually to Anna.
Anna wanted to butt in with it.
This is going to be a debate.
I'm going to defer
maybe.
to Anna. Go. No, defer to you.
I mean, it's perfectly tailored.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, so before when I said the worst thing that's happened politically in New Zealand in the last 3 years was that MMP failed us, but the best thing that's happened politically, in my opinion, in the Animal Justice Party opinion, in the cows of New Zealand, people who oppose our cows going to China on ships covered in excrement, is the ending of live export. And we would like to see that remain in place. We would like to educate people about what other animals are getting sent to countries that have lower animal welfare standards than ours. We don't believe that we have an obligation to put our cows at in the situation where we're trying to improve the animal welfare standards of the world. That is not a very good argument. Talk to anyone who's worked in human rights in China about that, maybe. So recently we've sent a whole lot of notes on airplanes, also to countries with lower welfare standards. We also send millions of day-old chicks on planes to places with lower animal welfare standards. We stun animals here. It's not necessary to stun them in all these countries. They're just killing them outright. We're sending native eels. We're sending crayfish. The countries that they're going to, they can be cooked alive, which would bring a fine between $5,000 and $20,000 in New Zealand. I could go on all day about this. Thank you for listening.
And we have reached our mid-time break, so we're going to take a bit of a break now. Now, do not head up on the stage to the secret toilet up there. You might barge into a secret coalition negotiation arrangement. Just a little bit of a heads up. So we'll see, was it candidates back here on stage in about 10 minutes. Thanks for that. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. Now it's time for hard-hitting questions. Okay, and for those who are wondering how hard-hitting questions work, this is where every candidate answers the same question. Some great news is they can't use their button cards because they're answering it. The other news is they can't use their defer cards because they're already answering it. So this is where we go one by one with all the candidates on questions. Now, our first hard-hitting question, number one, what is the most pressing issue in your electorate? So we'll find out what the candidates, what they think are the most pressing issue and their responses to it. Let's kick off with Kim. You get to go up first.
Thank you so much. The electorate is suffering. The people in our country are suffering. The businesses in the Port Waikato area are suffering. Our farming payouts have dropped already, down from 10 approximately to $6.90. They're about to drop again. The agricultural sector is suffering. The businesses in Pukekohe, which is the majority of the Port Waikato electorate, are not busy. Anybody go and walk down the streets. It's not flash. It all has a flow-on domino effect. What we need to do is stop what the actual reason why this is all happening. And it's because the government that is in play up to the October election, and I also believe that it will continue, is affiliated with the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. And the agenda, that sole agenda is deliberately destroying the infrastructure and systematic destruction of New Zealand.
Okay, next up, Alfred. What's the most pressing issue in the electorate?
The biggest one? Sorry.
Not quite the order I have on here.
Sorry.
Alfred, you're the next one up in the random order sheet.
So the biggest issue is, the biggest challenge has come from COVID-19. And I'm not going to go through things because Kim's done a great job in expressing the challenges that are there. But the most important thing is actually opportunity. And one of the things that we need to do is create more innovation. You know, all the SMEs that are here, small to medium enterprises, from farming to all the subsidiary groups that actually support that. I've spoken to the Pukekohe local business chairperson, and I can see the fact is that we need innovation and funding to be able to do that. We already have Seed Innovation. There's an organisation here that's a business that's doing well. They can thrive if we innovate, if we invest in that particular area. So to me, that's really important. That's the opportunity. But I think we need to extend that because through COVID-19, we've now seen there's other opportunities. There are inequities. In other words, out of the SMEs, there are communities that are part of our community that do not have the same opportunity. So I would say this, we need to innovate, we need to invest, we need to grow our local businesses and grow the opportunities for others who haven't had that opportunity to run their businesses and to thrive and do well.
Okay, Casey.
The biggest issue, which I was going to touch on, was law and order, but I think in the reality of this community is the unworkable regulations that have been put in place through a variety of legislations that is making us lose the ability to use our productive land and take control and use innovation and move forward. And we have to simplify things. And that's why I'm demanding that we need a strong local voice that's prepared to stand up against these insane regulations, make some changes, take back control from the Auckland super city and allow us to be innovative, to be flexible, and to make sure that we are making the best of our land and our opportunities that exist here today.
Okay, Anna.
Transparency. I think that's the biggest issue in every electorate across the country and possibly across the world. whether it be what happens to animals that we don't know, that we think that they're farmed how they used to be when the big conglomerates come in and put factory farms in all over the place, or whether it be the confusion as to how we're in so much debt and how we're going to climb out of it. Like, everything is transparency. We need to understand the world that we live in to enable us to make informed decisions about what we think should happen in that world. And people and animals, we all rely on everyone knowing our stories.
Okay, Jill.
Well, I moved out to this electorate, to Glenbrook, to get away from the traffic in Auckland. And what happened? They kept building more and more subdivisions around here, and that's putting a huge pressure on this electorate, because we're struggling to keep up with services like provision of water services, wastewater in particular, and transport. And so I think that that's one of the biggest issues here, because people end up being isolated in our communities because there's no public transport outside Pukekohe. And people, if they don't have access to cars, they might be elderly or they might be in high school, they cannot access services. They spend hours and hours on school buses getting to and from school, and if they're in tertiary education, they have to leave our communities to attend tertiary education. So I think that what should have been an idyllic community has been hit by overdevelopment.
And Vijay.
Thank you. The biggest pressing challenge, the cost of living crisis, which our people are facing. But in addition to what Jill and even you were mentioning of about transparency. And why is this happening? Just look at this. This is Council for Trade Unions. They said, and this was the analysis of National's approach. They said they will be removing $1.9 billion in the name of cost cutting, or from the backroom offices. Now, who works in backroom? It is the smaller jobs. The tech employee, someone who is in the call center. Now, what National says is, we will remove these people who are at the lower end of the ladder. We will remove the consultants at the top end of the ladder, and we will use these government employees who are in the center, and we will work with them. And if these two people were not there, how would these people work? These people, the regular people who they needed the support of both the back office people and the top. And National says they will just remove it. And who will get impacted with it? We will be impacted by having much more fewer services. We won't have enough services, whether it is for aged care or anything else. And this is the large picture which neither National nor NZ First or ACT, which should have put a candidate here, because of whom we are having a by-election. And just because they are about to get into the government, they have not put one. So I really wonder whether NZ First would stand for us after they get into the government.
Okay, so now let's get on to hard-hitting question number 2. Many areas in the Port Waikato Electorate are pine forestry blocks, both harvested and growing. What will your party do to protect the river and the water system in our electorate from the slash from harvested forests? So, and I'll have to be honest, I have yet to update my randomised list. Kim, you get to go off first.
Thank you. It's interesting, actually, that you should ask that question, because Labor and the Greens can take full ownership of what's happened with the forestry slash. They implemented legislation to literally stop the forestry millers from actually taking the slash out of the forest. They also introduced legislation to stop all of the dredging of all the rivers. The rivers rose, and what happened? They started flooding. That was all instigated, and it was called climate change. Bullshit. The actual slash from the forests is really easy. We need to actually rescind the legislation and put myself, New Zealand Loyal, into Parliament. We will fight to get that legislation rescinded. we will call them out every single day. And literally with a 1% tax that we will also implement, we will also push, will take profit back to the forestry sector.
Alfred, your response.
I think the first thing we need to do is to hold the forestry sector to account. And there's already been talk after the cyclone Gabriel that came through with all the slash that damaged not only the lower farmlands, but also to the bridges and how it isolated many communities. So the first thing, hold them to account. And the way you do that, number one, is by changing some of the legislation and also the policy as well. And I think what's happened is that, as you know, a lot of those forestries that were there were carbon sinks around carbon emissions. Now that needs to change, because in reality is that farming also needs to include grass. And many of the farmers have talked about that. They're not allowed to do that because of another ideology. So we need to change the ideology, make sure that there's opportunity to be able to change that legislation and the policy to make sure that actually our communities are not further harmed by the issues around forestry and the lack of care and concern around that. We've seen that. I've been around to the areas around East Valley and so forth. The damage is still there with those communities. And
Okay, Anna.
Yeah, so like I was saying before, industries need to be held to account to clean up their own activities. I'm not sure about the legislation that prevented them from doing that. That is ridiculous. If that was in place, it would probably be through industry lobbyists, because we've seen that time and again when you investigate animal agriculture, you see lobbyists trying to mitigate the costs of those industries with waterways, especially down in Christchurch areas. So it just comes down to activities need to be cleaned up by the people taking part in those activities, instead of putting the costs and the risk onto other people, like in this situation with the cyclone, on the community. It's horrific, and just the scenes of people's damage and animals dying in the floods it's just horrific. We don't need lobbyists creating situations like that in legislation.
Okay, Vijay.
Port Waikato, it's completely forestry. Yes, the cost should always be borne by the company, and there are no two doubts about it. If any business is trying to invest something here, and if they just want to throw the rubbish on somebody else's house, that is so unfair on the rest of us. So I think that's something the businesses have to own up. But again, when we say there is low productivity here, and political parties just come up and say, oh, we have lower productivity. New Zealand scores very low on productivity everywhere. I beg to question, why is that scenario happening? Our people, when our political parties, left, right, whoever, they should have invested much more earlier, from moving us not just from being an agricultural economy, but rather a talent economy. And that is something which they did not really created the infrastructure to the level which was required.
Just
and
say
now we
you've
see,
used up your time.
and now we have a problem where people are going to other countries.
Okay, Jill.
So everybody's saying it, forestry companies need to take responsibility for slash resulting from harvesting forests. They shouldn't be clear felling either. There are much more sustainable ways of managing forestry as practiced in Europe and other jurisdictions. And they need to clean up their act as far as the safety of forestry workers, because it's still a disgrace. And Helen Kelly did an amazing job as CTU president to raise awareness of the deaths of forestry workers.
And Casey.
This is the issue that we've got when we have decisions being made by politicians in Wellington without the knowledge and understanding of what the industry does and how it operates. And when you intervene and come up with solutions that sound all very good on a clipboard, the reality we've seen throughout this country, there are opportunities for slash to be used effectively to create other alternative products, and that's what we need to invest in. That's what New Zealand First has a confirmed policy on, and that's why we need a strong local voice in this community, someone who will work with the locals, who know what's going on the ground, and will make sure solutions are delivered.
Okay, now we're up to the most exciting part, and this is my favourite part of the show, where we get to ask the candidates what will be the first members' bill they put into the biscuit tin. Now, every sitting fortnight, Parliament sets aside the government's agenda and brings a members' day. And so that is where non-executive members can sit down there and have their bills to go through there. One member's bill was Ginny Anderson's miscarriage bereavement leave bill that equated a miscarriage to have bereavement leave from an employer treated the same way as a living person dying. So that's one bill. The more common one that we probably all remember, even that I was like 15 when it went through Parliament, was Sue Bradford's anti-smacking bill. If we delve through there. So there are different members' bills that have gone through and have made their stamp on history. So each candidate will get to have 2 minutes on what would be their first members' bill that they would put in the biscuit tin. And Anna, you get to go up first. What would your first members' bill be?
Excellent, thank you. My first members' bill, and I would hope that some other people in Parliament would also want this bill, because I know it has multi-party support, is a Commissioner for Animals. So no matter where you sit on the spectrum of loving animals, you must understand that MPI currently monitor the animal welfare of animals. There's a clear conflict of interest there. And we might all disagree on what it looks like, but we need someone advocating for the animals so that we can have proper discussions about how they're treated, so we can have proper legislation to protect them, so that we can deal with issues on a we agree as a society that this should happen, and someone's there to make sure it happens. Because I'm pretty sure that from my list of 50 different policies that I have here that are ranging from more funding for spaying and neutering, so we don't have unwanted animals on the streets in the wild to begin with, right through to transitioning to more plant-based farming. There's some things that we'll all agree on, but there's just not the person there to push it through Parliament in the way that it can benefit the animals. So it would be Commissioner for Animals.
Okay, VJ, what would be your first members' bill you put in the biscuit tin?
There are many actually, but I would focus on the first biggest one. I think for any citizen to live justly and peacefully, freedom is very important, and reinstatement of Bill of Rights is something which I'm very passionate about, and this is something which my party strongly believes in.
Very short and brief, but completely understandable. Casey, what will be your first members' bill you put in the biscuit tin?
I think what I'd like to emphasise is that I'm standing here for the electorate MP for Port Waikato, and therefore whatever my party believes in, what I stand for today and what I will advocate as a private members' bill for this electorate, and that's what I'm representing, will be a review that forces the super city structure to be revisited and allow Franklin to return to some level of autonomy where we can ensure that there is investment in our roads so that we can actually fix the coastal erosion that's sitting there with nothing happening to it. We still have road closures and traffic lights on Awhatu Peninsula with no indication that it's going to be rectified. If we don't get back some level of local control and autonomy, we will continue to be the cash cow for a big city that is continuing to ignore us. So as the member for Port Waikato, that is what I will do, and I will represent the interests of this community.
Jill, what will be your first members' bill in the biscuit tin?
So it won't be a surprise to you, but we would introduce legislation to ban the prescribing of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for children under 18 years of age who present with gender dysphoria. And the private members' bill would also include a restriction on gender reassignment surgery until over the age of 18. Gender transition is not just a change in the way people talk about themselves, the way they dress, and the way they live their lives. And those are things that should be respected. But gender transition also includes medical intervention, including use of puberty blockers on children, which stunts their development to the point at which the puberty blockers start. So once children start down that road, they invariably progress to a lifetime use of cross-sex hormones. It's irreversible physical changes which can involve infertility, but it doesn't end there. Next is the surgery. In female-born young women, now called trans men, this can mean a double mastectomy, and it's happening here in New Zealand. It's euphemistically called top surgery. And it was done, and I know for a fact it's been done at the Southern Cross Hospital in Christchurch on children as young as 17. Bottom surgery, we can just imagine what that is available for both female-born children as well as males, and can cause major lifelong health problems, sterility, lack of sexual pleasure, as we're starting to hear from detransitioners. The Conversion Practices Prohibition Bill 2022 basically requires children with gender dysphoria to be affirmed. Trying to use other means to deal with this condition, like counselling or forbidding your children to go on these drugs, can see you in jail. This is because suppressing gender identity is now an offence. Anyone, teachers, friends, relatives, who do not affirm someone's gender identity could be seen as suppressing gender identity. We should be protecting our children from the greedy fingers of big medicine and big pharma. We should be preventing the harm that's actually occurring under the rubric of gender identity. That gender transitioning, by affirming a young person's discomfort with his or her body and by offering medical solutions to fix the problems, is itself a conversion practice, especially if it involves converting young lesbians or gays, sometimes called transing the gay away. It's hard to foresee in future a royal commission that seeks to lay blame and provide compensation for the harm done to children and young people who are sucked into the transgender industry. Harm being done to children by the unregulated and widely promoted gender transitioning practices occurring right now.
Alfred, what would be your first members' bill for this new parliament? Because I think you've already had a stint. Not sure if you have you had a members' bill yet?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate. I've actually had a private member pulled out of this stint and also passed. And I was around the Auckland City Council local body representation. And so I know what it takes to get a bill through and the lobbying. And when I was there looking at and we passed that bill, I had to lobby around all the parties. I had to go around the community to get submissions. And what it was is that was to change the current piece of legislation around Auckland City Council, around local board representation, where you couldn't represent one, you could only represent one, not one or more. We had a number of people, had three of them that actually were representing 3 or 4 different local bodies. So we transferred and we changed that. Now, it was actually at that time, and Casey's brought up the point, because it was there that I had people talk about Rodney and Franklin. And they talked about the fact of the need of a review. So I'll say this to you. I would work, if you voted for me to become your local electorate, I would work with also Casey to make sure that we could get that across the line. The lobbying of internally with other political parties, going out into communities, because you need submissions to add to the body of information to make sure you can get that piece of legislation changed. Most private members' bills, you see, are amendments to current legislation. And so I believe that's what's really important. So what Casey has brought is actually a relevant issue, an important issue. What you would get is that you would get both of us lobbying, working together to change the review. And I'd go for 5 years as a starter so that we could ensure, not just for Franklin, but for other electors like Rodney who've actually suffered under the current regime that we have around the super city.
Just want to clarify on your members' bill. So you effectively said you could be standing for the community board in Frankton, standing for the community board in Rodney, standing in Mount Roskill, standing over in Howick, and effectively you legally could stand and get elected and collect salaries for those positions before
Correct.
your members' bill went
Correct.
through there.
We had one in particular that was involved in 3 different local boards, as well as being involved in one of the other regulatory organisations that were there as well. You can't now, though.
No.
My
Thank God.
private
Yeah,
members'
yeah.
bill has changed that.
Yeah.
You can only be involved with and elected to one.
Yes, okay. No, it's that's definitely good, because I do know on a city council level, you can't be a community board member, a councillor, or a mayor at the same time on that same council, and you cannot stand for its regional council equivalent authority over the same area at the same point as well, for which is where I know more my one. I don't know Auckland Super City, so I've learned something tonight, and I'm very happy about that. Kim, your first members bill.
What, as a people's representative, I'd actually like to ask the people of Port Waikato what they would actually like me to put forward. Then, if they turn around and said, "Go for it, Kim, what would you like to instigate first?" I'd actually have to say 1% tax. And the reason I'm saying 1% tax is because it fixes all the other problems throughout the electorate and throughout the country. Everything I'm hearing from the other people sitting here beside me is all about bureaucracy. It's all about the current system. The current system is failing, the fiscal system is failing, and we actually need a total review. We can't continue with the current local council boards. We can't continue with Auckland City Council Super City. We can't continue. You only have to look at the what Port Waikato or the Pukekohe Business Association done. They paid $500,000 to review the actual streets throughout Pukekohe and put concrete planter boxes through. It was absolutely disgusting what they were doing. So the fact of the matter is, let's actually wipe away all the bureaucracy and the bullshit that we're hearing from these people who are currently in Parliament, and actually get somebody in Parliament who's actually going to speak for the people of this country. That's me, that's New Zealand Loyal, and we're going to fight hard to get these members' bills through. Yes, we're going to have to work in and align ourselves with some other people alongside. But the fact of the matter is, we actually need to ensure that we're working for the people of this country, not the politicians. We need to stop the money laundering, and there is massive money laundering in council, and we know that. And we need to actually put effective changes in place for the people of New Zealand.
Okay, now let's wrap up for closing statements of why the Port Waikato voters should give you their electorate vote. I think that's the better word of putting it. It feels a bit weird considering this particular one, the party votes are out of the picture, and I can't sit there and say rank preferences because you guys, I don't think, use STV. Something I'm very used to. Call that a Wellington hangover. One of the things we do have. Jill, you get to go up first. Why should the Port Waikato voters give you their electoral vote?
So we have an opportunity to elect a Women's Rights Party MP in the additional seat created by this by-election. And I'm asking for your support, not just for the people of Port Waikato, but for the people of this whole country. The Women's Rights Party seeks to protect rights, such as the right to speak out without fear of intimidation or losing your job, the right to assemble or meet in spaces like Albert Park with the people of your choice, the right to safe single-sex spaces, the right to compete fairly and safely in women's sports. We want women's health to be prioritised, endometriosis, breast cancer and cervical cancer screening, excellent maternity services, for example. We want education to be safe for our children, not indoctrination. And we need to keep the pressure on to make sure these issues are addressed. They will not necessarily be at the top of the incoming government's priority list. Labor, Greens and ACT consider this seat to be unwinnable, and they're not standing a candidate. So I'm asking those people who support Labor, Greens or ACT to consider voting for me if these issues are important to you. I'm also asking national voters concerned about government policies and legislation that ignore women and parents to consider voting for me to send a strong message to the incoming government. So we will not be silenced. The sitting MP, Andrew Bailey, voted for Self-Sex ID and the Conversion Practices Act, and to put gender in the Human Rights Act. We need an MP in Parliament who has the courage to stand against an agenda that is dividing our society and causing irreversible damage to our children.
Okay, Anna.
Animals need a voice in Parliament. They have done for a long time. This is the first opportunity that you've had to give them a voice in Parliament. we're a small party, one voice fighting against many. Is I know a lot of you think that some of our policies are not the policies that you would want, but one voice in Parliament for animals can do a lot for animals, whilst having to work with the other parties. I'm interested in taking policies at a pace that society wants to take them, and there are so many issues that can be resolved for animals through consensus. I don't think anyone here disagrees with more funding for shelters and more funding for spaying and neutering animals. That's something that could easily get over the line. Commissioner for Animals. So personally, me representing Port Waikato, I'm very much wanting to hear what the community wants. I'm very much wanting transparency, problem solving, getting people involved in solving the problems. So I would be wanting to represent people on an individual level as well as animals in Parliament.
Alfred, your closing statements.
Well, Port Waikato, you get an opportunity to make political history again. There's an opportunity to be able to have 3 elected representatives. Andrew Bailey's already in. If he gets elected, yes, you'll get 1 extra. It'll be a list MP, but not in this electorate. Casey, and it's awesome that Casey's, I think she's got a lot to offer as well. She's already in on the list. Yes, if you elect her, they'll get another list MP, but it won't be in this electorate. You get an opportunity to have 1 extra MP that's working here locally. This is what you get. You get 9 years of political experience, being a cabinet minister, but here's my point of difference. I moved away from the National Party. Why? Because they moved away from values that are really important for people in our community. They used to call me the conviction politician because I stood up for what I believed in. And they said, oh, you're just a conviction politician. I said, what does that mean? You stand for what you believe in. I've got a history and an heritage. I'm a tradie by background. I work with my hands. I know how to make things work. I can work with Casey, I can work with Andrew, but more importantly, I can work with this electorate of Port Waikato to be your representative along with them. 3 for 1 is the opportunity for Port Waikato.
Casey.
I love this community. This is where I live. This is where I belong. This is where I've grown up. This is where I've policed. This is not a gateway community for another political party. This means we have to have a change. This country voted for change. If we divide our vote, we end up with Andrew Bailey, who couldn't front up tonight, who has not fronted up to debates. I caught a plane this afternoon to get up here, to be here, and I'm back on a plane at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning to get back down to Wellington, because I know how to work, I know how to serve this community. We need change. And these are great convictions. These are great people with great issues that we need to address. But I'm there. I can do it. I can hear, I can listen, and I can act on what you're putting forward today. But we don't need to confuse the vote, diminish the opportunity to actually have a change for this community. I'm standing to be the elected candidate and have the mandate to stand up for Port Waikato. Party vote is gone. This is about the personality, and I am the personality, I am the fighter that can make a change for this community.
VJ.
One big thing. I see Port Waikato has been voting national for almost like 30 years. So it only shows that people just stick with one party. And yes, we have NZ first trying to get one more list MP for themselves. But let's not make ourselves pawns in the larger political chess game. Let's have an independent voice. You don't have to vote for me. Please, if you feel anybody else is qualified enough, do that. And even look at this electoral report. National Party, Green Party, they get more votes than National Party, Labour and Green, cumulatively. So understand that this is not just about supporting your one political party. No, this is to make sure that everybody's voice is represented well. And yes, there is another one. This wasn't fair. It says consultants actually dominate the political arena in Wellington. I am a consultant. I know how to engage with consultants. So if you want to have someone who can provide an insightful argument, please vote for me. Otherwise, what's the point in having immigrants here and make them outcast? We can bloody well go to some other country. And yes, National can bring all more immigrants. So immigrants basically come here, work here, gain the experience, go to Australia. I did not do that.
And Kim,
Thank you. Do we really want any more politicians in Parliament? We actually want a people's representative. Love Casey to bits, but sorry, don't trust Winnie as far as I can kick him. So how about we actually vote somebody in who's going to listen to the electorate, who's actually got the gonads to sit there and ask the hard questions in Parliament. And by the way, Anna, there are animals in Parliament. They're called parasites. Okay?
I've seen
I'm sick.
Parliament TV.
I'm sick of the parasites, and I'm going to make a change. And should I have the pleasure and the privilege of being voted in, I'm going to damn well make change. I make that statement. I don't make promises because politicians make promises. I'm going to make statements. And the base of the fact of the matter is I'm going to go down there and each and every day I'm going to ask the hard questions. And what I want to see is that the people of this country go back from rags to riches. Thank you so much.
okay, it's that time of the night of the show where we're going to have to say so long and see you later. Can I thank Nick for in the studio doing the cameras, Jill for being our question host, Jojo for being our camera person, Alex for being our remote editor tonight, for making this show a success. And thank you to the candidates for going up there. I will be back in Wellington by road tomorrow. So Casey, if you want to sit there and shout me dinner, you're very welcome to do so. I should be getting back about 7 p.m. So, you know, considering I've got a job to get back to on Thursday. By-elections have always been a very interesting thing. We had our first test of the Hamilton West by-election where Hamilton made us feel so welcome. And I can say, Pukekohe, thank you for doing the same thing. And thank you for, even though it does feel weird that I'm in Auckland, but I haven't even hit the Auckland telephone calling area for where you have landlines. Those things that, you tend to leave for grandma and granddad to sit there and ring. So doing that. Now, something that we are working on to bring in a secondary project for It's in the Ballot, because It's in the Ballot is basically themed around elections. We're going to be launching a new small version political video shows called The Order Paper, and it will be examining the bills going through Parliament as they go through each stages, the people who put the amendments forwards, whether the amendments pass or fail, that sort of thing there. So you can actually know who these people are from these random pockets of the country. Put it today, I learned a lot about Port Waikato Electorate. As someone who lives in the Rongotai Electorate, you know, and has only lived in Rongotai, Ohariu or Otaki Electorate, I wouldn't have known much if it wasn't for the show. And I want to help my experience and improvement of knowledge so you, the viewers, also can benefit from that. So that's the plan we bring for the order paper. We do have a URL. Website's still not set up yet, but it will be the orderpaper.kiwi. Considering that's a URL that's not been taken, and I think it's a bit more fitting than .co.nz or .nz or .org or whatever. So go through that. Now, we do have, we are exploring the option of doing the Hamilton East Ward by-election for the council, and we are looking at doing the Lambton Ward by-election when that date is announced, which that person will need to resign in order to actually make that happen. That will get there at some point, hopefully soon. I mean, you know, Parliament will be getting sworn in. So those are two It's in the Ballot shows that are looking on the cards as we gear up to take a little bit of a back seat, because the next real serious election time is the local body elections in 2025. So for those who are in here in studio, if you want to ask questions with your candidates, they're going to be here to mix and mingle with everyone in there. I do want a photo with us though before we go, so please don't quickly run away. I need to get a photo for the Facebook page to show the fact that, you know, the candidates are there. And for the audience, thank you for coming tonight. This is very nice to feel very packed here. it's not easy when you're unknown to a community to actually pack out a hall. It's quite a privilege there, and thank you for welcoming me and my team into your community. So doing that, so thank you for those watching and those candidates for coming tonight, and we will see the next Sits in the Ballot show sometime in the future. Good night.